Hey, it's Mark Lowe, and guess what? It's time for an update to assignment number 3. So we're going to talk about the Appleton's Encyclopedia of American Biography. So stay tuned. All right, well, welcome. It's Mark Lowe with Kentucky Tennessee Research. We're here to talk about the updates from the assignment. Hopefully you worked on it. We called it Weekend Research Project number 3, Appleton's Cyclopedia of American Biography. And the whole point about this, and if you haven't, go back and look for that video. It'll introduce you to this resource and then tell you kind of what you were supposed to do. Now, all these are always optional, but the whole point is to kind of learn from looking at new resources, identifying ways that we can use those for our family and research. And I'll try to suggest new ones from time to time, and we'll do an assignment. Then we'll come back and I'll talk about maybe how to use that assignment a little more clearly. Okay? So for this assignment, we were referring to the Appleton Cyclopedia of American Biography. You would find that in more than, it could be in your library, for one thing, but I gave you 2 online sites, one of which was Ancestry. The link is there at the bottom of that slide, and also at the top it's available on HathiTrust. Now there are 2 different publication volumes of that, and so you'll want to check both, and I will encourage you. In that previous video I said you always need to check both of the or all the publications, whichever they might be, so that you make sure that you're looking at the right, maybe the most updated one. We talked about a biography of Alvin C. Gillum from Appleton's, and I looked him first of all up on Ancestry. So again, to get the overview of what we were going to do, go back and watch that video. But let's talk about what I did next. Okay? And it's okay if you watch this before you go do it. The whole point is, I believe you sharpen your sword when you practice doing research. And I would encourage it not to be about your family initially. Practice doing it on some celebrity, some famous person, some nobody person, and begin to do the research. Then you begin to understand the resources, the collections, and how you can build upon those, and then make that work for you. Okay? So I'm going to suggest that one of the things I would often do in regard to anybody that I'm trying to build everything about, and in this case it's a biography, and I want to check the details, I want to check the dates, I want to check when things happen, and I would create a simple timeline. I could just type this up in, I don't know, Excel, Word, paper, any program, or just write it out. And I just use the basic information that was found in his biographical sketch on Alvin Gillum, for example, and sometimes it was simple dates. If it is, I just put 1830, born in Tennessee. Notice that if it had more complicated date, for example, you look at 1861, he became a captain. Well, that was May 14th, 1861. That was supplied within the biography. So that's the way I would create a timeline. You could have more than one entry per year if more than one thing happened. If you have the specific dates, then add those. Now, what this does in reality is forces you to look at information in a systematic, chronological way. And that's always good for us to examine the families that we're researching, or an individual in particular, to make sure that we're looking at the same individual in the same place at the same time. It's very possible that somebody could have the same name and being a different location, or actually 2 people of a very similar name very close to each other. So often a timeline will help us see any of those discrepancies, make sure that we're focused on the right person, because remember, we do want to research the right person. Occasionally that won't happen, and when we do, we want to record that information and keep it. That's called negative information about our research interest. But if we don't record it, then we're apt to go back and do the same thing over and over again. So it's good for us to, look back and identify that we are looking at the right person. So create that timeline, and that was kind of the assignment. I hope you had a chance to do something similar to identify it. I did stick strictly initially with just the information that was found in the biographical sketch, and then I began to add to it. For example, I added the information of 1850. So I looked for him in census records, and that would be a great thing to add into your timeline. And I found this of him in 1850 in Orange County, New York. It's the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. That confirms something that was in the biography. And he's the last person on this section that I've clipped out here from Tennessee. And it looks like that they're kind of isolating the cadets by state, which I find very interesting. So this would be a great place to go back and look at the people who went to the military academy, the same cadets in the same class from the same location, and determine how they may have developed a friendship over time. Okay? So again, that's looking at neighbors, friends, associates. We all know that's the way we research. Continue to go forward in 1870. Now, I'm skipping around just a little bit. He's in Behar County, Texas. And there he is. Notice, though, if you look back at the biographical sketch, his family did not appear in the sketch. Didn't name his wife or his children. But in this case, there he is as a 40-year-old, and it indicates his rank. Information, his wife Margaret, daughter Caroline, and his son Alvin Jr. So again, when we're piecing a piece of information together on the timeline, notice that none of this was created, or none of this was included. And so I would go back and add the date that Caroline was born, the date that Alvin Jr. was born. I would determine when he and Margaret married. I would indicate that marriage date on the timeline. So again, adding information as we learn it is the aspect of determining what's most important. And as we build this, we may find that we're in the wrong thing. I was continuing to pull some records together. There's lots of information on the family. So I did, it was just perchance. And this is a burial in the Arlington National Cemetery for an Alvin C. Gillum. But this guy is buried in his service is 1935. This must be the son. Or is this the son? So again, it's going to require some more information and a little more research. And so I think it's important that we identify those things. It could be a grandson. So the whole point is we don't know. Make sure it fits when you're putting the things together. Make sure that you identify anything that you don't know. Make a note on the timeline. I need to research this further. Draw a star. Put a check mark. Anything that will make you go back and review that information. Because often we might just pass over it. And when we pass over it, we make a mistake. It's important that we either analyze it or make a notation to analyze it again later. Because if we don't, we're making a mistake. Okay, and we don't want to do that. Okay, I found lots of newspaper accounts of Alvin Gillum as general, of the various dates and events that he asked for. So I could appeal to that interest and add those notations and sources in regard to that information about just what he did in regard to that service. All of those things, including people that he may have encountered in that process. And as a military individual, he moved to lots of places. He was stationed in different places. The battles, the individuals, his commanding officers, the people that he served with, all of those create his neighborhood. So again, my interest can expand really immensely in trying to learn a lot more about this individual. Okay, I did want to find an obituary, and I would find multiple obituaries for this gentleman. It was well enough known that I should find several, and I found the one from the New Orleans Republican. This obituary should be compared again to the sketch that was provided in Appleton's that I started with. I would compare those details. And then I'm going to look for additional items that might be added to the timeline or research that are mentioned in his obituary, including additional family members, burial location, all those things that can help us understand more about the people that we're researching. I mean, I know it was an assignment, but lots of fun. I don't know about you. I enjoy this. This is a lot of fun for me. And I like doing it when it's even not my own family, because it sharpens my sword. I think it makes me a better researcher. So notice that there were 2 publications of Appleton's, one in 1888. Well, that's post the time that he died, and they had modified the publication, and so there were additions in that, and I've added just the top few of those in red. So as I checked the timeline, for example, it gave a specific date of birth and a location, Jackson County, Tennessee. Notice that they had added the fact that as soon as he graduated from the military academy, he served against the Seminoles. Lots of interest and lots of identity of information to put him in historical context with what's happening. And that's one of the other advantages of a timeline. We'll talk about later how to take a timeline and compare it, of putting folks in kind of historical context. But that's what a timeline really does. That's what we're doing when we're putting all these things in order for that individual. I mean, I found lots about his family, lots of information, lots of newspaper accounts, the sons and grandsons that served in the military, the government records on this family, and lots of family papers. So again, and strong military influence. Okay, strong military influence. So again, lots of information to add to a story. Now, if this were my family, lots of good detail. And of course, as I continue to look with this, remember what we originally talked about, and think about doing it across the spectrum. Do some basic genealogical research. So if you didn't do this yet, then I suggest go back to Appleton's, find some biographical sketch that you'd like to do a little research on, and then do them by finding the extant available census records again. Confirm or determine if there are family members. Remember, there were none mentioned in Mr. Cullum's, but yet he did. He was married and he had children. Follow the events. That's a great reason to have that timeline. And then can you place that subject, the person of the biography, at an event that may be mentioned? And it looks like that we probably could. In fact, there are military returns that are available. So I can actually use the military records in this case, most of which of that series of returns are on Ancestry. So doing a search on that, I might find those. And there are additional records that are available. And I can do just general Google searches or other books on HathiTrust of military reports and accounts. Okay? And are there other resources? If you always find a resources that you think might be helpful in other areas, grab an index card. Remember, I have an index card over my shoulder always. Grab an index card, make the notation, go check out the record, identify it, put it in your list of resources. And then always compile a summary of your findings, whether that's a timeline and notes, etc., or create a file with the source information or dates. Put that stuff together, because you never know. You never know who's going to call you and want some information. I mean, really. What are the odds that Alvin C. Gillum's family might call me and ask me if I know, if I can find some piece of information about him? They've heard this story, but not that. Well, it may not be likely, but you never know. I mean, there's the picture of the gentleman, certainly distinguished, served his country. However, that's never all of the story, and there's always more. I encourage you to go out there and look for some additional information. Go out there and find somebody that you want to discover a little bit more about. And in the whole process of doing that, take that idea of doing a timeline, of pulling the census records, of putting things in order. And then once you kind of get comfortable doing this, I suggest you go back and do it with one of the family members that you're having problems with, that you've kind of you have some answers that aren't answered. You've got questions. You've got questions that you need to build some information about. Try some of these techniques. That's the whole point of doing these assignments, by the way. Thanks for participating. If you haven't done it yet, remember, you can always go back and do this at any point in time. These are just more ideas. If we come up with some more, I'll share some more updates later. If you like what we're doing, be sure and subscribe. You'll get an update as soon as we put out a new video, and we're trying to do more every week. Enjoy talking to you. It's always fun. Have a great day researching, and we'll see you next time.